watch collecting can be one of the most mindlessly consumerist pursuits there is. Which raises the question, is it even a hobby at all? Because for a lot of people, collecting just means buying. And at a certain point, you have to ask, does buying things actually count as a hobby? The problem is, watch collecting has a capacity to be one of the most interesting, varied, and accessible hobbies out there. But which one it is depends entirely on how you approach it. So how did something born out of utility, with a long history of innovation, end up feeling so superficial? And how do you actually enjoy watch collecting, without it just turning into mindless consumption? To answer these questions, we need to briefly discuss consumerism and how it connects to the world of watches. At its core, consumerism is a social condition in which people acquire goods beyond necessity, until that consumption becomes part of their identity. A major component of modern economies is the requirement of constant growth. That growth requires constant consumption. We see this in the watch industry as brands expanding their offerings into new markets, advertising differently, and the need for major conglomerates to achieve record profits every year. In this industry, it's not enough to buy just one watch. Brands need you to keep buying, to consume new products year after year. And over time, that principle changes how watches are perceived. As consumerism grows, they're seen as more than their utility. They become symbols. Ask the average person about watches, and they'll probably say they're flashy, vain, or a way to show off wealth. And they aren't exactly wrong either. For many, watches are a means of status signaling. There's a reason that business executives and finance bros buy a Rolex Submariner, and it's not for its superior diving capabilities. In this age of an unprecedented amount of wealth inequality in the world, it should be no surprise that buying watches comparable in price to a yearly salary is perceived in this way. And this is all completely by design. The culture at the higher levels has been deeply imbued with luxury elements and constant consumption for quite a while, especially since the pandemic watch boom that shifted the conversation towards hype pieces and prices more than ever before. Watches are now seen as investment pieces, financial assets to be flipped, and status symbols, something new that you need. Brands feed into this commodity fetishization endlessly. There's always something new, better, more expensive, or desirable for you to buy. As a result, prices keep increasing. Brands move upmarket to sustain that growth, and what used to be attainable to the average person is increasingly becoming out of reach. And make no mistake, you don't need to be rich to fall into this culture of constant consumption in this community. One of my biggest takeaways from the discussions in my recent videos is that watch collectors are often the worst offenders. At a certain point, there's no other explanation for why someone would feel the need to buy dozens of similar watches, purchasing one after another so quickly. It isn't talked about enough in the watch space that so many enthusiasts have serious issues with buying addiction. It's a shame we've gotten to this point, because watch collecting can be so much more than that. It's one of the most accessible hobbies there is. Rich, poor, young, old, men, women, children from any country. Anyone can participate at almost any price point, from $10 to thousands and beyond. I don't know of any other collecting-based pastime that has such a wide variance. In what other communities can you have two people's choices be so far apart, yet equally appreciated by each other? And there are so many different ways into it, in appreciation of design, art, and engineering, to fashion, practicality and tooling, and history. It's a universal experience. Everyone interacts with time in their own way. There's a genuine connection point to others and an expression of oneself in that decision. Unlike cars, for example, which are often essential to the modern lifestyle, watches aren't needed these days. Choosing to wear one says something about you in and of itself, whether it's a key milestone in your life, a memory, or just your personal style. Even if they are inherently materialistic, they still can show sentimentality and tell a story about someone. And like every hobby, it can be a form of escape. It's not surprising that interest in watches surged during the pandemic, as something to latch onto during such a rough time. The focus on the beauty and intrigue of these little trinkets that are with you wherever you go. It's a natural impulse. You gain an interest in something, and you want to have it. But it's important to understand this feeling, and work to minimize our overconsumption in this hyper-consumerist world that pushes us to own more for the sake of more. And speaking of consumption, if you want a bit more of an analytical angle to the watch content you're consuming, consider subscribing. My aim is to provide actual value to my viewers by discussing deeper topics on watches like this in a new video every week. Thanks. I don't want to come across as hypocritical either. I own watches I don't need, and I'm sure most of you do too. I understand that becoming a monk with no worldly possessions isn't desirable or realistic. Wanting and enjoying things is natural. But there's a difference between that and constantly consuming without taking the time to actually enjoy what you have. You can go the way of acquiring as much as you can, buying whatever catches your eye and giving in to the industry's consumerist mindset. Or you can take an intentional approach, buying a collection slowly, curating pieces that actually mean something to you. Watches are an interest with the curse and blessing of infinite choices: style, color, size, brand, country, etc. But we must understand that owning everything simply isn't possible, and that there are other ways to enrich the interest and represent the community beyond buying. If you find you buy watches often, ask why. Where do you actually get your enjoyment? Does it come from wearing them, appreciating the craftsmanship, design, and utility? Or is it from the act of buying? We all get the rush from getting that new watch, but it's important to not let that become the addiction. Because that initial rush fades quickly, and a 14th Seiko diver isn't going to change that. There are plenty of ways to find sustained happiness in this hobby that don't involve buying more. Consider taking up watchmaking, repair, or restoration, for example. I've found it leads to a greater appreciation and understanding of what goes into the watches you own. Watch modding, or even just regulating budget watches, is another subsect of this field that can provide a ton of mileage to an enthusiast as well. Watch meetups are a great way to connect with others in the community and talk watches, and I don't think they're discussed enough. This interest can be an incredibly creative outlet too if you're into that. Photography, strap making, and watch designing are all great avenues to get into the hobby more. Try limiting how many watches you buy each year. Getting away from that immediate gratification of frequent purchases to the anticipation of rare acquisitions builds an appreciation for your current collection and what you actually want with it. And after you do buy that new watch, try to avoid looking at reviews in watch forums for a while. This industry is constantly manipulating you to buy more. Be happy with what you have for as long as you can. And if you really need to get something, counterintuitively, buying straps can actually reduce purchasing habits too. It gives more variety to your existing collection and fends off that urge of buying a new watch just a bit longer. Liquidating watches you don't use in order to get one you know you will is another great option. A ton of collectors in my comments have a strict one in, one out policy for their collections, which I respect quite a bit. What brand would be more fitting for the obscure reference in an anti-consumerist discussion than Vostok, particularly a brand built in the USSR? The Vostok Amphibia Radio Room is a strange and somewhat rare watch from the early 90s that you can still find for around $100. Of course, this has all of the features of your typical Amphibia: a unique gasket system that enables 200 meters of water resistance, a rugged 17-jewel manual wind movement, and a bi-directional rotating bezel unlike most dive watches. What makes the Radio Room unique are obviously the red and pink stripes on the dial, which have their own history and intrigue. In short, the pink and red sections are officially designated silent periods on naval communication frequencies for every hour of the day. The idea is to help radio room operators listen for distress signals during these times. In an industry surrounded with endless luxury and increasingly unobtainable pieces, Vostok still stands out as a completely utilitarian watch with tons of intrigue without any flashiness. It's not the most high quality or refined, but it's certainly more interesting and achievable than so much of what is out there. You're not collecting this for status or the opinions of others. It's a curated choice because of its niche history, quirkiness, and ability to be used as a tool. I received a comment on a recent video that mentioned the concept of the hedonic treadmill. The idea that happiness returns to a stable level despite positive or negative outcomes in life. I think this applies perfectly to watch collecting. It's so easy to fall into the cycle of constant buying, chasing the feeling of something new. But that feeling won't last. You'll return to your baseline and be back right where you started. It's important for all of us to understand that a bit of sensibility and restraint goes a long way. You don't always need the interest of the week. The world of watches already has enough stigma and negative connotations surrounding it. We, as enthusiasts, don't need to feed into those stereotypes by trying to own everything. Enjoying watches is a lot more than just buying. It's how they connect us with others, what they represent, and their ability to channel our creativity. If you approach it that way, it becomes a hobby. If not, it probably is just mindless consumption. Hopefully you found this discussion valuable. I find that this isn't a topic most watch channels ever like to cover. I'm really interested to hear your opinions in the comments and how you feel about the culture surrounding the industry and consumption of watches in general. And if you're interested in another video about collection philosophy, watch this one where I break down the optimal number of watches I believe a collection should be. Thank you for taking the time to watch.